Carter here from Carter Curricula, where I am on a mission to savor our shared humanity with analysis, commentary, and application. In this particular series, where my savoring is taking place with poetry written by dead poets. We're in a series of 10 poems where we're studying Nikki Giovanni's poetry from this book called Black Feeling, Black Talk, Black Judgment. Nikki Giovanni. Her I have come to understand her and grow to love her through her poems that were written in the 1960s and 1970s. We've got a poem here, uh, a book of poems it was copywritten in 1970. So we've got a text from that book called The Funeral of Martin Luther King Jr. Let me go ahead and set this up before we get started, and then we'll cook on it and analyzing, giving commentary and application along the way. Um, Let me set it up. This poem sort of reminds you that there could be some icons in your life, some people in your life who you respect, people in your life who are deserving of your respect. They have done great things. In this instance, Martin Luther King did a lot of amazing, great things. Now, stories exist and float out about the things that he did that were less than favorable in terms of his personal life, but no one's perfect. And just in terms of him being an iconic figure in the United States, he is second to none. His life is a beacon of light for the entire world. However, that does not necessarily mean that just because someone is an admirable figure, that you want to follow in their path, that you want to have a life that's patterned entirely after theirs. And as we take a look at this poem, we see that Nikki Giovanni actually has some feelings about Martin Luther King's life that she wishes that she would never encounter. And we'll see in a few moments what I mean. The Funeral of Martin Luther King Jr. His headstone said, free at last, but death is a slave's freedom. We seek the freedom of free men and the construction of a world where Martin Luther King could not could have lived and preached nonviolence. Let's take a look at this poem, just analyzing some of its parts. At the very beginning, we see that this poem is about the headstone of Martin Luther King Jr. Now, if this is actually on his headstone, I'm not sure. I should probably take a look at that and find out. If I do find that, I will put that in the description. This phrase is from his March on Washington, a speech given in 1963, as I recall. It's an allusion to that. She doesn't say directly, "Oh, this is from 1963 speech on his March on Washington." No, um, the headstone itself says it, but it's also an allusion to that speech, and we just have to know that through our own historical study. But, I mean, I always talk about this word, but. But is always a huge word in poetry the entire poem hinges upon that. So it's all going in one direction, and then and then the whole thing goes in a different direction. So you see a contrast between the first two lines and the last one, two, three, four, five lines. Death here is what enslaved people looked for to be free. But death is a slave's freedom. So, they would talk about heaven being a place where they can get their freedom. Enslaved human beings would glory or revel in the life after, because they knew that that's the place where their at least their bodies could be free. Their minds were free, but at least their minds could be free on earth, but at least their bodies at bare minimum could be free, and they wouldn't have to deal with the enslavement of their bodies. And so here she says, but death is a slave's freedom. We seek freedom of free men. So she's contrasting the life and the death of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't have a freedom that of free men. He had a slave's death. The fact that he was killed showed that he had a slave's death. He was preaching nonviolence, preaching peace, and he was killed for it, which showed to her in this poem that he had a slave's freedom. Now this is his life was admirable, generally speaking, but there was this aspect of his life she apparently does not want. She wants real freedom. We seek something different. You see that there. We seek the freedom of free men. We seek the freedom of free men. Notice how she turns her phrase there, the freedom of free men, alliteration there, the freedom of free men going on there. And it's a crucial phrase in the entire poem. It's catchy. It draws your attention to it. The word freedom is used up here also, and then the word free is used here. And so she is really using this word quite a bit, or a variation of the word, in order to drive her point home. And the construction, she wants a whole world that is built in a particular way, where the person who is the focus of this particular poem could have lived. He could not have lived in this world. He did not live in this world. He could, but he did not. He did not live in a world where there was freedom of free men. He lived in a world where he had a slave's freedom. And so, what can we make of this particular poem? It seems as though the author is using the allusion to show MLK's life as a non-example of what the speaker wants. The allusion to MLK was there to contrast what she wanted and what others were seeking for, what others were actively looking for in their lives. It wasn't what MLK had in his life. She's not bashing him. She is not putting him down for not having it. She's just expressing a reality that she did not want to live in, and she wanted a different reality. The theme for this poem, as far as I could tell, is desire and fight for full freedom, and not just a freedom of the body. She's imploring individuals who are seeking freedom to seek the kind of freedom where they are free, where it is freedom of free men. And this concept, as we move toward um, our applicational part, this concept of freedom is something that we all should, if we have it, we all should embrace it, and if we don't have it, we should fight for it. Freedom is something that all of us want. It's a shared human experience, and it is one that we should savor in, and it is one that we should afford the privilege for other people to have. We should build spaces where freedom reigns, where there is great freedom for other people to be themselves, to express themselves, to be able to live life on terms that they set, even if those terms are different from ours, as long as their terms of their life don't conflict with us in ways that cause bodily harm or infringe upon our rights. Then obviously then freedom should reign, and each human being should have the freedom of free men. Isn't this what the founding fathers talked about? Freedom of free men. Isn't this what the U.S. was built on in terms of its stated ideals in its documents that form the foundation of the country? This idea of freedom of free men is something that's worth having, something MLK in his beautiful life, in his rich life that where he helped many people, something he was not afforded, but something that those who came after him were seeking with all their life. Well, that's all I have for this one. I do appreciate you stopping by and taking a listen to this poetry that was written, and this beautiful poetry that was written by Nikki Giovanni. The next poem that we will take a look at, which is the seventh installation of this particular um, series, where we are savoring our shared humanity. Knoxville, Tennessee. Knoxville, Tennessee is what we're going to take a look at on the next one. So I will see you on the next one.